On June 18, 2011, Amy Winehouse took the stage in Belgrade for what would become her final major performance and one of the most painful nights of her career. She stumbled through songs, slurred her words, and forgot entire lyrics as the crowd began to boo. Serbian media called it a national embarrassment, and even government officials described the show as a disgrace. Within days, the rest of her European tour was cancelled so she could recover, but she never did. Just over a month later, on July 23, 2011, Amy was found dead in her London home from alcohol poisoning at the young age of 27. Ilse Koch, wife of Buchenwald commandant Karl Otto Koch, became infamous for her sadism towards prisoners during the Holocaust. Survivors claim she ordered beatings, stole from inmates, and selected those with distinctive tattoos to be killed so their skin could be turned into lampshades, book covers, and gloves. Nicknamed the Bitch of Buchenwald, she was convicted of war crimes, sentenced to life in prison, and died of suicide in 1967. Her name forever tied to some of the most grotesque atrocities of the Nazi regime. This woman convinced herself she needed human blood to survive the way other people need food. Starting in 1989, Brisbane's Tracy Wigington started killing animals, storing their bodies, and drinking their blood in private feedings before deciding she needed a living human victim. With 3 friends, she lured 47-year-old Edward Baldock into her car and drove him to a riverbank. The moment he stepped out, Wigington ambushed him with a hunting knife so violently that investigators said the wounds were frenzied and his throat was sliced so deep his head was nearly severed. She crouched over him as he died and drank from the blood pouring from the gash in his neck. Detectives later said the scene was so saturated with blood it looked ritualistic, and photos recovered from Wigington showed she'd been staging mock sacrifices with her friends in the months leading up to the murder. When police searched her belongings, they also found jars of preserved animal remains and notebooks describing her goal of becoming a fully transformed vampire. She pleaded guilty and received life in prison, yet still walked free in 2012, leaving one of Australia's most senseless and sadistic murders behind her. He convinced her he was a 300-year-old werewolf, and it led to one of the most disturbing crimes in Canadian history. In 2006, 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson fell into a secret relationship with 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke, a self-proclaimed 300-year-old werewolf with a history of abuse, drugs, and violent fantasies. The pair openly talked about murdering people, even modeling themselves after natural-born killers. On the night of April 23rd, Steinke slipped into the Richardson home while high and drunk and stabbed Jasmine's mother 24 times, then brutally killed her father after telling him it's what your daughter wanted. Upstairs, Jasmine murdered her 8-year-old brother as he tried to defend himself with a toy lightsaber. Hours later, instead of hiding, the couple went to a party laughing, making out, and laughing about how her little brother gargled as he died. Arrested the next morning, Jasmine became Canada's youngest person ever convicted of multiple murders. She served the maximum youth sentence, had her record completely wiped in 2020, changed her name, and now lives in the community. While Steinke, now calling himself Jackson May, serves life with parole eligible in 2032. During the midnight premiere of The Dark Knight Rises in Aurora, Colorado, a 24-year-old shooter entered the packed theater through an emergency exit wearing full body armor, tossed gas canisters into the crowd, and opened fire with an AR-15, a shotgun, and a Glock. In just 90 seconds, he fired more than 70 rounds, killing 12 and injuring dozens more as movie sound effects mixed with real screams. Among the victims was Alex Sullivan, celebrating his 27th birthday and first wedding anniversary, Jessica Gawi, a 24-year-old reporter who'd narrowly escaped a Toronto mall shooting just weeks earlier, and 6-year-old Veronica Moser, who was killed instantly beside her 25-year-old mother, Ashley. Ashley was shot in the neck and abdomen, left paralyzed, and lost her unborn baby, later waking up in the hospital repeatedly asking where Veronica was, not realizing she was gone. The shooter was found calmly waiting outside, calling himself the Joker, while police discovered his apartment rigged with explosives meant to kill the investigators who entered. His notebook revealed a cold plan to maximize casualties, as he was sentenced to 12 life terms plus 3,300 years, but survivors say no punishment could ever possibly match the horror inflicted on that night. In 2003, 17-year-old Jessica Santillan came to the U.S. from Mexico with her family, who had crossed the border illegally in a desperate bid to save her life. Jessica suffered from a congenital heart defect, and after years of struggling to breathe, Duke University Hospital agreed to perform a rare and risky heart and lung transplant. The operation began as a miracle in motion until everything went wrong. The organs Duke transplanted came from a donor with the wrong blood type. Jessica was O positive, the donor was type A. Within a few hours, her body went into violent rejection. Her skin turned purple, her body swelled, and doctors realized the unthinkable mistake: they'd given her incompatible organs. 2 weeks later, they found a new donor and performed a second transplant, but Jessica never woke up. She was declared brain dead on February 22nd, 15 days after the first transplant. A family who risked everything to save their daughter lost her to a clerical error, and her death forced hospitals nationwide to overhaul how transplants are verified forever. DJ Carey, a former Irish hurling legend, was jailed after admitting he spent years faking a cancer diagnosis to scam friends and contacts out of nearly £350,000. Prosecutors revealed he sent staged photos showing what appeared to be medical tubing in his nose, later exposed as an iPhone charging cable taped to his face. He claimed the money was urgently needed for treatment, exploiting sympathy and trust while continuing the deception. The scheme collapsed when victims grew suspicious, and authorities confirmed he never even had cancer at all. Carey pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges and was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison. A man once spent nearly 5 months locked inside Rikers Island without realizing he could have walked free at any point for just $2. Court records later showed a judge had ordered his release only a week after he was arrested for a nonviolent offense, setting an absurdly low bail, but his lawyer never told him. With no one informing him of his status, he remained trapped inside one of the most notoriously violent jail complexes in the United States, a place long plagued by assaults, gang activity, neglect, and inmate murders. By the time the mistake had been discovered, months of his life had already been lost to one of the most dangerous detention systems in the country. Her selfish decision caused her toddler son to die in one of the most excruciating ways imaginable. In May of 2011, 2-year-old Kenton Brown died a slow, agonizing death inside his mother's car in Louisville, Kentucky. His mother, Molly Schaus, had stopped to buy drugs and passed out for nearly 12 hours, leaving her baby trapped in his car seat as the temperature inside the vehicle climbed to more than 130 degrees Fahrenheit. When she finally woke up, Kenton's tiny body was covered in sweat and blisters, his lips blue, and the buckle that held him in place had seared into his skin. Detectives said he had clawed away at his car seat straps and pulled his own hair out in a distressed panic before succumbing to heat and dehydration. Schaus was later found to be under the influence of Xanax and marijuana, and initially lied to police about what had happened, claiming she'd only been gone for a few minutes. A jury convicted her of wanton murder, calling it one of the most disturbing cases they'd ever seen. She was sentenced to 35 years in prison, as the courtroom wept while prosecutors described Kenton's final moments, awake, terrified, and slowly dying alone inside the car his mother never returned to. On October 19, 2025, 18-year-old Kimber Mills was celebrating with friends at a bonfire in Alabama when 27-year-old Stephen Tyler Whitehead showed up uninvited, a stranger to nearly everyone there. Witnesses say he began harassing people at the party before pulling out a gun and firing into the crowd. Kimber, who had never even met the man, was struck in the head and leg. Her friend Silas McKay, who intervened and tried to protect her, was shot several times but survived after multiple emergency surgeries. Kimber was rushed to UAB Hospital in critical condition, but her brain injuries proved irreversible. As her family made the heartbreaking decision to remove her from life support, hundreds of classmates, teachers, and nurses lined the halls for her honor walk, a silent tribute to a girl whose compassion lived on through others. Her heart went to a 7-year-old boy and her lungs to another patient in need, an ending that reflected the kindness she'd hoped to share as a future nurse. Whitehead has been charged with murder and multiple counts of attempted murder, but has yet to fully explain why he opened fire that night, leaving a community completely shattered by his senseless act of violence. In April of 2023, 22-year-old Mercedes Vega vanished after parking her car in the garage of her Tempe, Arizona apartment complex. Hours later, her body was discovered in the backseat of a burning vehicle miles away in the desert. Investigators later found her blood in the parking garage, proof she'd been attacked there before being taken and left to die. The autopsy revealed she'd been beaten, shot, and had bleach poured down her throat, and that she was still alive when the fire was started, ultimately dying from burns and smoke inhalation. For almost a year, the case remained unsolved until police arrested 22-year-old Sincere Hayes, linking him to the torturous murder. However, authorities believe more suspects were involved, leaving the Vega family tormented by the thought that others who helped burn Mercedes alive may still be free. In 2015, 20-year-old Lauren Bunner took his ex-girlfriend, 18-year-old Jolie Callan, hiking at Mount Cheaha, the highest point in Alabama. Just before sunset, he took a haunting photo of her taking in the view at the edge of a cliff, completely unaware it would be the last thing she ever saw. Moments later, he shot her twice in the head before pushing her body off the mountain. Bunner later called 911 and calmly confessed, claiming it was part of a suicide pact he couldn't go through with, but investigators found no trace of such an agreement. It was premeditated murder, and in 2017, Bunner was sentenced to 52 years in prison for killing the girl he once called the love of his life. In 2009, Michelle Fox was accidentally shot in the face by her husband while he handled a loaded shotgun. The blast destroyed almost everything. She lost both her eyes, nose, and entire upper palate. Surgeons couldn't fully rebuild her, so they created a custom magnetic prosthetic face made from silicone and acrylic that literally snaps onto metal implants in her skull. She now lives every day with part of her face detachable, a tragic reminder of how one careless moment can erase your identity in a split second. In 1935, Anne Cooper Hewitt, daughter of wealthy inventor Peter Cooper Hewitt, checked into a San Francisco hospital for what she believed was a simple appendectomy, but woke up unknowingly sterilized. Her own mother had secretly convinced the surgeons to tie her fallopian tubes while she was under anesthesia. The motive was pure greed. Anne's father's will stated that if she ever had children, she would inherit millions. But if she died childless, her fortune would revert to her mother. To secure the money, her mother permanently destroyed her ability to have children, then tried to justify it by calling Anne mentally unfit and promiscuous. Anne later sued in one of the most shocking court cases of the 1930s, but despite national outrage, the criminal charges were quietly dropped. The case was settled in private, and Anne's mother never spent a single day in prison. For the rest of her life, Anne struggled deeply with depression and died at just 40 years old, while her mother outlived her by more than a decade and died comfortably in 1969. Here's some extremely rare footage of a pilot flying straight into the eye of Hurricane Melissa. The eye forms when a hurricane becomes powerful enough to organize itself. A calm circular zone in the center where air actually sinks instead of rising, while the surrounding eye wall is a violent ring of wind and rain. The eye can be eerily clear and still, sometimes even letting sunlight through. This is the only known footage of the extremely rare box jellyfish known as Chirodectes. Captured off the coast of Papua New Guinea, this was only the second ever sighting of the species in recorded history. Draining glyphosate into a container looks like a glitch in the Matrix, but it's actually a laminar flow effect, where the liquid moves so smoothly it appears frozen in place. Here's some extremely rare footage of a snow leopard caught on a trail cam in the wild. These elusive predators are known as the ghosts of the mountains for a reason. So few humans ever catch a glimpse of them that even wildlife experts can spend years tracking one without success. They live high in the remote peaks of Central Asia, blending in perfectly with the jagged, icy terrain, where temperatures often plummet below zero and oxygen is scarce. Their thick, spotted coats act as camouflage against the rocks and snow, making them nearly invisible even when they're just a few feet away.